He owns the running store Two Rivers Treads, which is our favorite place to order our minimalist shoes. Two Rivers Treads has all the tools you need to keep your feet happy and healthy so you can perform the activity that you love with joy, spring, and efficiency. Dr. Mark Cucuzzella, what an honor it is to welcome you back to Boundless Body Radio.
Well, thank you, Casey. That was a kind introduction. I'm standing at my store now and back room, so if you hear a little noise or disruption, I'm in a little bit of a public space, but that's cool.
Yeah,
this
that's
is a
totally fine.
little place of fun and joy for me. A small community running store where get people outside and hopefully get them to move without pain.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm so glad that you decided to open that store. And we have to say, customer service is off the charts. You guys are so good with your Zoom fittings. I've never set foot in the store. We've ordered several pairs of shoes from you guys, and dealing with your staff is amazing. You get a real sense of passion and community that you guys provide. It's not just the shoes, but it's all the running events, the clinics. I see it all the time on social media. You guys are really getting out in the community. It's awesome.
Well, thank you. I think, there aren't many like locally owned, small, independent running retails left. Everything's being kind of bought up by, fleet feet organizations and corporate, larger corporations. So, but if you're out there, you're in Utah and I'm in West Virginia, but if you have a small community running store, support them if they're a store that gives back to the community, because that big box store is not putting anything back into your local economy. Almost all the assets that they would raise as revenue go to their big corporate engine, wherever that is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love to spend a little bit more at my local bike shop, and I'll always try to bring the mechanics, a bunch of energy drinks or snacks or whatever. And I feel like supporting them in that setting is so much better than ordering parts from a place where maybe I could save a few bucks, but that money is not staying inside the community. I love to support those businesses that do a really good job.
Yeah, they're local jobs. There's whether it's a bookstore, a bike shop, they're putting local youth to work and good summer jobs, and better than McDonald's, where they're probably not going to be good for their health. And you hope that what they learn here as an employee might take them somewhere else in their career. We've had 3 physical therapists come out of the store, a fascia massage therapist come out of the store. So people develop like a passion and an interest that takes them to somewhere else. And some still like serving in the store and look at this as a lifelong career. So everybody, has a place and something they learn from working in a small community retail store.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so preparing for this interview, I got to go back and listen to our first interviews, which was equally fun to hear you in our discussion back in the day. It's equally painful to hear how bad the podcast quality was back in the day, and I always hate the sound of my own voice. But that was a time, this was in the fall of 2020, when I was just starting my transition onto minimal footwear and more barefoot. And now I'm sitting here, I've got my texture ball that feels really nice on my feet. I've got my toe spacers in. We do everything either barefoot or very minimalist shoes. Vivo Barefoot is one of my favorite brands. We also love minimal sandals. So really are loving Earth Runner sandals. Really fantastic. And I have to, I could not predict how much better I feel now than I did when we first had that conversation. I was really bummed out that I was going to throw away, thousands of dollars worth of shoes that I'd accumulated. And I could not imagine going back to some of those shoes. I mean, do you get that all the time?
Yeah, it's a slow process, so you're retraining your feet and you're learning to reconnect with the ground. And, when your foot can feel the ground, it actually can retrain itself as a spring. So when your foot's actually working beautifully, you have this wonderful spring on your feet. And then that's like when we run, the spring system in our body, the fascia system returns energy. We don't want to burn calories and burn energy to move. We want to do it super easy and efficient. That's fun,
That's right.
So the goal of running or any movement isn't burning calories. It's to do something that brings you joy and do it as efficiently as possible. And that's what barefoot training will do. Now, if you have to go, say you're up there and you want to go run the Wasatch 100, or I'm just kind of making up the name from some ultra trail run on hundreds of miles of rocks, put some cushion on your feet, because you've trained your feet to get strong and feel the ground and move better. But, there's going to be a roll out there. If you're doing an aggressive trail run or something with pack, you probably do want to have a little protection, but still you want to have a wide shoe. You want to have it flat, meaning the front and the back are not pitched different. It's not stacked up. So yeah. I think ultra shoes were founded in Utah.
That's right.
So that's a Golden Harper's dad. Hawk Harper had still has a small running store. I believe maybe it's in Provo, but you could look it up.
Okay.
It's still out there. Started the whole movement, really.
Yeah, and all of their shoes are named after locations in Utah, which is kind of
Lone
cool.
Peak and
The Lone Peak and the Escalante and all those, yeah. And you're right, like you can still train barefoot, but be really considerate about what your application is going to be for footwear. And you can still find great brands out there that, yeah, maybe they have a little bit of cushion, and you probably need that if you're doing some of those things in trails. But by and large, just the ability to have your toes spread, grabbing the earth, and really get that feel and that roll through the big toe. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, everyone should do a little bit of barefoot training. You don't have to go run a lot. Just walk barefoot. Walk around your house barefoot, and these muscles will start to wake up a little bit. There's no downside to it, right? There's absolutely no danger, no downside. Don't go do a 10-mile barefoot run your first run. Obviously, that wouldn't be too smart. Like any training and adaptation, and you go by feel, like we were talking about before we recorded. If it feels good, it's good. If it's not giving you a good response, say you're trying that and it's not giving you a good response, don't keep doing it. But if you're doing something, whether it's your diet, your exercise, whatever type of exercise, amount or footwear, if it's giving you a good response, continue. That's good. That, like, our brain tells us what's beneficial and what's not, even if your Garmin or something's telling you something else. Like, become intuitive with what your senses are. The sandals you mentioned, I mean, I think there really is something to earthing, and this grounding, and there's some good videos on it and some good literature. And I don't know the science, but I feel I run almost exclusively barefoot in the summer. I mean, barefoot. I have a beautiful golf course right next to me, and they let me run in the morning on it.
Nice.
And that's just like nirvana. And then I'll run on the smooth roads too. Once my feet have gotten a little adapted, that smooth pavement's actually glorious to run barefoot, not gravel stuff. That's why we invented shoes and moccasins. Cut stones and gravel are sharp, but smooth, fresh pavement. Oh gosh, and you can't scrape the ground, right? You have to land like perfect, like a cat if you're in your bare feet, or else the pavement will take your skin with it. But play around a little bit with that if you're listening, and just see where it takes you. I think everyone, when they were a kid, would be on the beach barefoot. You wouldn't think about wearing shoes. And now you see people wearing shoes running on the beach, go back old school, like no one ever ran on the beach with shoes.
Right.
So the feet,
that's that's a really, really good point. I would have never imagined that when I started this transition, that the hard surfaces would actually be better. I thought the softer surfaces would be better, but you're right. You have to adapt your foot to be soft and land soft, and it totally changes the way you run. Like it basically like perfects your running form without you doing anything different. It's pretty cool. And it's funny that you mentioned the beaches. We've got lots of playgrounds around here with a lot of sand up by the lake. It's so funny to see all the little kids jettisoning their shoes that are like every single day. We find like random pairs of shoes that the kids have left, and they know what's up. They want their feet in the sand. They want it on the playground. Exactly.
Actually, we could share in the show notes. I wrote a textbook chapter for a sports podiatry textbook on children's shoes. And I thought they would never accept it, Casey, because the hypothesis of the chapter, going back to like literature from 1904, was the ideal shoe design is barefoot. Looked at all the literature of what happened, to different societies that don't wear shoes, and look at their foot structure, and even the small studies done. You would think if you have a quote collapsed arch in your fore, meaning like your feet muscles are kind of decommissioned. Let's just support that arch with an arch support, and say you're a 4-year-old kid, their odds of having dysfunctional flat feet later in life, would you guess, is it higher or lower than if you just left that kid alone?
Yeah, that's right. I think of it
worse,
as like
right? Because you're bracing the foot. Yeah, so if you just leave the kid alone and let him, he's learning how to walk. Just let the kid walk around and use, just like your hands, right? If we put, mittens on our hands and baseball gloves because at age 4 they weren't working well and they needed support, your hands would be dysfunctional. So somehow we don't apply that to, what is probably a more complicated anatomic structure, the foot, than the hand. It's 26 bones, 33 joints, 100 muscle tendon insertions. So I think there's, and all of these joints move in triplanar motion. These aren't like hinge joints. This is like way more complex than I think anyone's brain can get around. So we look at evolutionary biology to give us the message of, let's just treat the foot as it's designed to be treated. And then maybe at the end of the day, we won't have a bunch of orthotic wearing adults.
That's right.
That's right. Be true. Again,
wow.
The kid, get them, and we sell the Vivo Barefoot kid shoes here. Minimal zero shoe kid shoes, little sandals, things like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, Dr. Irene Davis told us the best thing that we could do is make sure you start young and keep them in minimal shoes. Right? If you can do
Yeah.
that, you'll avoid a lot of the issues that a lot of people have when they are grown up.
Yeah, she's a great colleague. I've been to her lab and actually been in a couple of her experiments of running the Boston Marathon in sandals and 5 fingers, and they look at loading rates. So you look at what's happening, and she had one year she had 3 groups. She had one with a complete minimal, which is like a 5 finger, another cushion shoes, and another group which she called kind of partial minimalist, which would be like racing class. They have a little bit of cushion. And a surprising thing from what they saw in the data, you would think the Barefoot group obviously had the lowest. She called them loading rates, meaning like how kind of softly do you land, like do you land like, or do you land more, so, like, yeah, you deal with like jumping off of a box, like a box jump, do you land like a cat, or is the gym shaking? So the group that was barefoot landed the softest. They had the lowest loading rates, but the group that actually landed the hardest was the group in a thinner shoe with cushion, because likely that group had trained in cushion shoes, didn't change their gait, and put a thinner shoe on for race day and hadn't changed their gait. So that group may actually be at risk because they're now running in less protection than the group with the bigger thick shoe, because that cushion will allow a blunting, right? If you jump off a box into, a pad, that's got some EVA foam, right? You could land locked out knees, locked out heel. If you had no shoes, right? You can't even imagine. Boom, that would that would hurt in 6 inches. But you could land on a pad, a few feet off the ground if it was soft enough. So you could land completely wrong, but over time. But again, do what works for you. If you're sore after your run, probably you're doing something wrong. You're never sore after returning from a barefoot run because your feet don't let you. It's like a governor, right? Like your feet actually don't let you work harder. It's like you always feel better when you come back in the door. It's like, it's really insane. Like you never, like, it's weird. Go try it. But it's an adaptation to be like completely barefoot.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point.
Of a fun challenge. All of us have like and this isn't a 1 week fitness challenge, right? Like you said, Casey, 2 year or whatever, like we first chatted or you first called my store. It's like 2 to 3 years of, it's like adapting to a low carb diet. This isn't a 3-week clinical trial.
That's right.
It's a whole change in how your body's metabolism is working.
Yeah, no, that's right. I love that. We could talk about feet for the entire hour, which would be totally fine.